In this lesson, we will talk about selecting plant species for greening roofs or facades. The objectives are to reduce the amount of thermal energy reaching the buildings and to increase evapotranspiration and thus the cooling of the building. Ideally, we will use native species to the area, although this may be difficult or impossible if there are no nurseries growing these plants. The main objective is to improve the thermal comfort inside the buildings. As additional objectives, we aim to increase biodiversity and to raise awareness among pupils about the importance of the natural environment for their own well-being. We will first discuss how to protect and insulate facades with climbing species for which tutors are usually installed in the form of mesh or wiring. All the recommended species are hardy and have a good covering capacity and are widely used by wildlife for nesting and feeding. They also attract pollinators. These species are easy to grow from the ground or from large pots that can be placed on the ground or on roofs to form curtains over netting or wiring, which they will eventually cover completely. Honeysuckle species like direct sunlight. All of them have a very showy blossom and the flowers are very fragrant. There are native species such as the honeysuckle, Lonicera etrusca, or Minorca honeysuckle, Lonicera implexa, which are readily available in nurseries. Common ivy is another very good species for covering facades or pergolas. It is native and easy to find in nurseries. Star jasmine is a spectacular flowering and very fragrant species which loves direct and intense sun. Although it is an Asian species, it is not invasive and can be used safely. Two different species of the genus Parthenocissus are known in Spanish as Parra virgen, the Virginia creeper and the Boston ivy. They are exotic deciduous species widely used by birds for nesting and feeding. These species have great covering potential from early spring to early winter and can therefore be used in cases where we want to reduce winter heating consumption. Here we show how to grow them in large planters on the ground or in raised platforms. Another native species that is perfect for pergolas is the vine, the common vine, a species widely used in Mediterranean villages. It has deciduous leaves, so we should consider where it is planted because in winter it will not insulate the facades, although it is something that we could be intentionally looking for to reduce heating consumption. I consider this species especially interesting so that the ancestral knowledge about its cultivation outside industrial plantation is not lost. In the case of green roofs, the objective is to get a continuous ground coverage which insulate the building from external climatic conditions. To increase the attractiveness of these roofs, we will plant other plants that provide color, attract pollinators, or contribute to increase the biodiversity and visual complexity of the roof, and that we call accent plants. The choice of plants depends entirely on the locality of the intervention, especially the rainfall, or if it's technically or economically feasible to irrigate. Since we are also acting on the roof, we must guarantee that it is waterproof and its stability will not be compromised. Any planting of this type involves placing several layers of insulating and water accumulating elements. Specifically, and from the roof to the outside, the layers will be a root barrier if the waterproofing is not root resistant, a protection mat, a plastic mat with alveoli in which water will accumulate and we colloquially term egg cap, a filter geotextile that prevents the substrate from clogging the egg cap, and finally the substrate on which the planting is done. Sometimes the substrate is as simple as small pebbles. The first months after planting are critical for success. If there is no automatic irrigation, some summer watering will be done in the first 2 years to facilitate the establishment of plants. Several species of stone crops in the genus Sedum, are among the species suitable for extensive green roofs. All of them are hardy and love intense sun and drought, and are good ground covers and have showy blooms, the color of which depends on the particular species. Native species easy to find in nurseries include the white sedum and, with yellow flowers, the beating stonecrop Sedum acre. Another hardy and undemanding species to grow is the rutulwort. Some other native species, ground cover species that are easy to find in nurseries are the thyme, Thymus tigris, the lemon thyme, Thymus polygioides, and the subterranean clover, Trifolium subterraneum. In Porto, because of its more humid climate, we also have the sea heather, Frankenia levis, and with its intense and showy flowering, or the purslane, Portulaca oleracea, which has fewer and more discreet flowers. Also the yellow sea daisy, Palenis maritima, and the sea mayweed, Matricaria maritima, both with intense blooms and attractive to pollinators. In addition to the ground cover species, and although these may have intense and showy blooms, an extensive green roof will be much more interesting and beautiful if we intermingle species that provide different notes of color or structure, reducing uniformity and increasing biodiversity. Among the most interesting accent species are the yarrow with yellow, orange, white, pink or red flowers, long flowering and very fragrant. Other native species that can be used as accent and self-propagate easily are alliums and chives, like Allium spherocephalum and Allium scenoprasum. In Porto, other native species would be the red valerian, Centranthus ruber, and the holy flax, Santolina rosmarilifolia. Finally, a few notes on some medium to large size trees that can be planted in courtyards. Stems should be at least 15 centimeters in diameter, measured at 1.3 meters from the ground at the time of plantation to avoid losses. A school playground can be a risky place for a tree. Species appropriate for dry climates are hackberry, Celtis australis, narrow leaf ash, Fraxinus angustifolia, but female-only cultivars, for example raywood, to avoid allergy problems generated by male flowers. Also the Persian lilac, Melia cedarak, or graphiosis-resistant varieties or species of elm, like Ulmus minor or Ulmus glabra. In Porto, common oak, Quercus robur, is a good choice, together with broadleaf ash, Fraxinus excelsior, and it is not advisable to use maple or plane trees in the genera Acer or Platanus, because they can cause severe allergic reactions in sensitive people. Here are our email addresses to answer any doubt, and the communication channels of the LIFE My Building is Green project. Thank you very much for your interest.
In collaboration with the LIFE program of the European Union.